Hey everyone, I'm Rishi from Prilo, which is the #1 AI-powered CTSO preparation platform. Today I'm going to be interviewing Sahaj, and he'll be giving his advice on how to place the ICDC. So Sahaj, how about you tell us about your background in DECA and how you got into the niche of business?
I'm Sahaj. I'm a senior at the Academy for Math Science and Engineering at Morris Hills, New Jersey. I've been doing DECA since my freshman year. I actually got into it a pretty weird way, where one of my friends who ran Morris Hills DECA at the time told me about it the summer before my freshman year, and I'm like, okay, this sounds really cool. Because I always had somewhat of an interest in business. Both my parents work in business, so I thought, okay, this is going to be interesting. But then when I walked into school, I realized, well, shoot, I have to take this business class to do DECA. And I didn't take that business class, or any business class. So I had to work with my counselor to switch my schedule. The only class available was game dev, which counted as business class for my school. And I ended up making that switch, and it was honestly one of the better decisions I think I've made, because after that, that allowed me to do DECA. Been doing it since then. Now I'm president of our club.
Yeah, so I guess for context, me and Saj go to the same school, and we're very close friends, and he also introduced me to DECA pretty early on as well. Yeah, so I want to keep this interview like no fluff. So I guess let's talk about district preparation since we're heading into that time period now. I know maybe you might not be studying. I know you're a very smart person. So I mean, what do you think you would suggest to like other people to study? Or if you study, what do you think is the best things that you do?
So I definitely study a bit, and I would say the earlier I have been, like my freshman year, I probably studied more than I do now because I'm more familiar with it. But what I would say for most people is get an idea of what the event you're doing is. Look at the website, deca.org/compete, and click on the actual website. Then in there, there's going to be a sample test and there's going to be a bunch of role plays. So for the test prep, because the test always comes first in New Jersey, the test is early December. Actual competition where you do the role play is in early January. So for the test, you can use that test. What I would recommend doing is take the test. Then when you're done, and take it in the timed setting. When you're done with it, go score everything and make sure you actually read the explanations for everything you got wrong. Because I think more than just spamming a bunch of practice tests, it's more important to understand the concepts you get wrong within less practice tests so you can actually improve. So now what does that entail? If you actually look at these practice tests, each of them have like a long explanation at the bottom, of not only why this specific answer is correct, but also why all other answers are wrong. So I would recommend reviewing like the entire thing, why the answer you thought was wrong as well. And then also review things that you weren't sure about. Even if you got them right, make sure to mark down like any questions you're not sure about when taking the test, so then you can go back and check them, because I think that really helps. Past that, there isn't much for tests. You can also find more tests online. Just like look up your event name and then test, and they'll come up. And then let's go to role plays because I think that's kind of more what you wanted to cover. Role plays are a bit more interesting because the first thing you need to understand is like what type of event you're doing and how many role plays there are. Principals events have one role plays, and personal financial literacy has one, and then individual series have two. So just first of all, prepare yourself for that. And then after that, make sure you know the time limit. So individual events, 10 minutes prep, 10 minutes role play, and then TDMs are like 30 minutes prep, 15 minutes role play. So once you get all of that out of the way, because that's all of the background stuff, what I would recommend doing is looking at the practice tests on the DECA website. There should be about like 12 or so maybe, and go through as no, maybe not like don't go crazy about it. Like you probably don't need to do all 12 for districts, but like do a couple. And the way I would recommend doing it is in the same timed environment or even less. So the way I prepared, for example, was instead of taking 10 minutes to prep, I took 8 minutes to prep, so that when I went to the actual competition, it felt like I had more time than usual. So then I had 8 minutes to prep, 10 minutes to present, and we'll get to like what to actually do like while you're at the conference a bit later probably. But do that, probably do that with a parent, or a parent, a friend, or even in front of a mirror or recording yourself. So either they can tell you or you can see what you did wrong and then you can work on that for the next things.
Gotcha. No, that's awesome. Yeah, I think just to add on to a couple things, some things that I did as well, were make acronyms for a lot of the bigger like business performance indicators. That was one thing that helped me like, memorize a lot of things going into the event itself. But yeah, for sure. And then I guess like keep going on with the role play related advice. I know districts is not as saturated as, states and ICDC with very like high performing role play performers. But I would say like, what do you think is your like main strategy for like standing out in role plays?
So I think before we get to the strategy of the role play itself, it's kind of important what to do like while you're there. I think one of the most important things that I would say to have during a role play is an actual watch, because a lot of the times you're not given like a timer in front of you, and you have to try to fill up like 8 to 10 minutes probably. So when you're not able to time yourself, it's a lot harder. Just bring a watch. With the role play itself, I think you first have to make sure you address the performance indicators, where you need to cover all those key points. That's what you're actually graded on. But what's important to really understand here is that everyone is going to have a pretty similar response to these performance indicators. Everyone's going to have like the same like understanding of what factors contribute to marketing strategies or things like that. Like they're all pretty generic. So then what you need to do is differentiate yourself. Have you covered, Rishi, have you covered the DECA acronym, like define, explain? Yeah, okay.
I have in a couple of the videos, but I think like, people have seen that video a lot of times, seen that advice a lot of times, and that's their like new norm. So it's like, what's the
Mhm.
next step?
So, I mean, I think that's a like good baseline to go off of. This then,
Yeah.
just generally though, that embodies kind of the idea that creativity is everything when it comes to these because you want to stand out. You want to make sure you're not like the like 70 other kids who are at the thing. Another thing that you can do to help you stand out um, is just like making tiny props for yourself. So something that I've always found as being really helpful is I make tiny graphs. Like for example, I might draw this like supply and demand curve, or even something entirely meaningless in real life, but like it looks like kind of cool and looks like interesting, and that like oh there is at least something behind it. So even if it's like kind of dumb, I try to spend like 30 seconds making some sort of visual aid that helps with this. Someone I know who I think like won ICDC finals another year. What he did, he was even more creative than me, I would say. I think one time I think he ended his role play by saying, let's take off into whatever solution, and he legit threw a paper airplane. So, like, just crazy stuff like that, I think is the biggest thing to help you stand out. And then beyond that, just go back to the fundamentals. Make sure you're confident. That actually plays a huge role because whether you or not you know your stuff, you can get away with a lot even if you don't know it, but you sound like you know it.
Yeah, 100%. I think like not, overly being so scared about the event itself and just treating it more as a conversation can be like very helpful mindset at least, even though,
Mhm.
it has to be very structured. I think just thinking of it
100%.
as like talking to you know, someone that's a friend, maybe that just makes it work better. And now that we're already talking about visual elements, I guess, a lot of people are making like business cards. A lot of people are making, marketing posters and like advertisement. What do you think is like, I guess that's like pretty common now. Like, what do you think is like the best way to make like unique visuals?
Yeah, so I personally have never made business cards or marketing posters, maybe because my events haven't been like more marketing focused, but also because I feel like those are slightly more time consuming where I have to write down specific details. So what I really like to do is, again, as I said, like make these graphs like either supply, demand. I remember I made this like microeconomic graph one time, a bunch of other random things, because I think what really helps with those is that yes, they're graphs, but they're also graphs based on these really key economic principles. So it kind of signals to these judges that not only am I like going above and beyond, but I'm actually smart about it. So I think that's pretty important there.
Yeah, and it aids what you're talking about, which is like
Yeah.
really, really important. Yeah, awesome. So I guess now going into as you go into the progression of, states and ICDC, what do you think is like the main reason that people struggle?
In what sense?
Like in qualifying? Because I know you have had a very smooth process of making it towards ICDC across the last couple of years, but I guess like, seeing your peers like me not being able to make it every single time,
You qualified.
what do you think is like, the main reason that people struggle?
Yeah, so I think it comes down to two things that I've touched upon. The first and the basis for everything is the fundamentals. So that's stuff like confidence. You need to be sure of yourself. Even if you're good enough to, let's say, get like a certain place at districts, if you are not at the top of your game at states or ICDC, you will not make it. So you need to do that. The second thing you need to do again is just be creative. Because yes, you say that more and more people are being creative, but it's kind of like this moving barrier where they're becoming creative, so you have to be even more creative than them. This, I can say it and it sounds a lot easier than it is. So what I would recommend doing for that is find things really that work for you. So then that goes back to doing these practice role plays because once you like do a lot of these practice role plays, you kind of get an idea of what's easy for you and what you're really easily able to explain. So I think for example, my freshman year, I did principles of finance and it was principles of finance really isn't too finance related. It's more like these customer service scenarios inside a bank.
Yeah.
So my thing was I always made this whenever like some customer was upset about something, I'm like, oh, and we'd be happy to offer you a complimentary credit card with these specific rewards. It was like again, it was something dumb, but it's something that the judges probably wouldn't hear a lot of. So it's
Yeah.
something that would be really like interesting to them. So I think it's stuff like that. And then I guess other than that, it's know the actual business stuff. So whether that be like again like that's specific to your career cluster. So for marketing, know like all the marketing stuff, like the four P's of marketing, and obviously a lot more in depth. For
Yeah.
finance, I would say finance is probably the most technical. I did business finance series my sophomore year where I had to study quite a bit. For that one, yeah, I think like just know the stuff in your career cluster that you can also do things like whether like reading like actual textbooks or anything like that, or even just chat GPT and guides, stuff like that always really helps. And I think even like right before roleplay, just going over all of that kind of helps you as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And to add on, I guess, overdoing the creativity is not always the best option. I think for like finance, as you said, like
Mhm.
finance and more technical role plays, I think like it's definitely 90% better to like, put the nail in on the more technical fundamentals. But then when you go on to things like marketing, which is more general and less technical, I guess you should have more freedom to be creative. And I guess in terms of being creative, one thing that I also noticed was like these judges, especially at the district level, it's their parents. So it's like try to refer to things like that are happening, current trends. Maybe that's like something that appeals to them. And as long as you catch their, attention, that's like one of the most important things. And I think
Absolutely,
like
yeah.
also in the beginning, like, as you get farther and farther in the progression of the competitions, it's more and more important to, know the fundamental things and also be creative. But early on, creativity is something you can like harness very, very freely because the fundamentals are something that not all the judges even themselves know. So it's just being able to catch their attention. That's like one of the most important.
Absolutely, yeah. I think you've touched on something that I meant to talk about, but I wasn't like really able to conceptualize in words, which is that you have to be relatable to the judges. You need to make sure they understand. So if you're spewing a bunch of technical jargon and the judge looks like they have no idea what you're talking about, you should probably simplify it a little bit. But don't like the flip side of that coin is if they're looking just like straight at you without any expression, don't take that as a bad sign. Some of the judges who have given me the highest points have looked at me with like the most straight faces.
Yeah. Attest to that, I would say like, at districts, very similar thing happened to me my first year. It's like I got very blank face from my judge and that can throw you off while you're in the role play. But I did end up getting first at that districts level, so I think it's like don't, over stress while you're in this situation either. Just take it very smooth.
Exactly. Just take it as a conversation. And also, if you do like, let's say, for example, New Jersey has like 13, 15, I don't know how many qualify from districts to states.
Yeah.
If you score lower in that, don't be scared. Because for example, my freshman year, I got sixth at districts, but then it was either fifth or sixth, I don't remember. But I ended up also getting fifth at ICDC. So clearly like there is improvement that happens along the way.
Yeah, and then on the flip side of that, it's like if you do very good at districts, doesn't mean that you're going to automatically qualify to ICDC or be like
Exactly.
one of the highest performing, individuals in that sense. I am the
Yeah.
perfect example of that. I took it very, very easy at states because I thought that it translates over very, very well, and we were in a competitive environment. But yeah, for sure. So I guess next question is when we're at like states, there's so many people. I mean, ICDC, I'm assuming it's the same thing,
Yeah.
but at states there are so many people. They're always there. I guess like I get more stressed when I see so many people in general rather than just at my like event station. So it's like, how do you not get so overwhelmed? Or like if you do get overwhelmed, what's your like strategy for battling
Yeah.
that?
So you mentioned like similar at ICDC. So it's about 4,000 at NJ States and like 22K or something insane at ICDC. So it's a lot more, but it's also a lot bigger of an area. So I
Yeah.
guess it balances out. What I would say for that is I've never like I would say probably I lean extroverted. I'm not like very extroverted. I lean extroverted. So I'm not I don't have the biggest problem with being in these like extreme crowds. But I think generally like before I wrap a role play or anything, I find myself just in this like kind of locked in state like maybe 15 minutes before the event where I'm just focused on like the actual event. I'm thinking about terms that I have to memorize or phrases or like even performance indicators or things like that. Like I'm focused a lot on myself. I kind of just drop the world around me. Sometimes I'm even like just pacing around. I probably look like a maniac to people. Like you gotta again, it's something that's probably specific to like yourself. But for me, that's like worked. I've just focused on myself and like not listen to the world around me.
Yeah, awesome. I guess one thing that I would say is remember that you're probably never going to see these people again. So it's not like you're going to have a bad impression, like to your judge, for example. Just go in there thinking like, oh, this is just a regular conversation. You don't want to think that, oh, this is going to tarnish your reputation in DECA. Nothing like that
Mhm.
happens. It's impossible.
Yeah.
So just take it like that. Now, one other question that I thought of with a friend, and we also got this question a lot in our community, and I wanted to phrase it in a nicer way. So it's like, let's say your prep time was cut in half, what would be like the main thing that you focus on first?
100% performance indicators, because that's what you're actually graded on. So what you want to do is write down the performance indicators and then write down like bullets of how to address them. Make sure you actually both like address what the actual performance indicator is, but also how it connects back to your specific scenario. So you don't want to just explain like marketing strategies that a firm can use, but you also want to explain this specific firm, let's say like it's some grocery store and you're like the manager, how you can implement that within your daily life. So you want to make sure that your explanation and your like work on these performance indicators really stands out. But I guess the core of it is get the fundamentals down, and that's what the performance indicators are. All the
Yeah.
creativity stuff comes second.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like when you're running low on time, I think the best way to be creative itself is just give examples. And
Mhm.
that's like so important to, just explanations in general. So it's like even just doing the bare minimum sometimes can, it can hit the jackpot for whichever judge that you're with. So that's yeah, very,
Yeah,
very
100%.
with the performance indicators.
I think like really funny example of that is one of my friends. He was doing principles of finance last year. He was in his finals role play, and he made up this completely random guy named Bob Corver. Doesn't exist, no relation to anything. Said, and he basically like gave him this whole personality and would be like, what would Bob Corver do in this situation, or what would he not do? Again, it was this example. It's a really silly example, but it stuck out to the judge. He told me that the judge was laughing, and he ended up getting third at state. So clearly, it worked in some way. So yeah.
Yeah, if you make your judge laugh, that is a very, very good indicator.
Mhm.
Unless you said something dumb and you made them laugh, that's a different, that's definitely different. But yeah, keep practicing. I mean, I guess like if you're very, very confident from the get-go, I know friends that, first year, they went all the way straight to ICDC with you, Sahaj, and did very, very well there. So I think confidence is most of the time, like 70% of the way there, just
Absolutely.
being extremely confident. But yeah, I think that like wraps up a majority of the questions. I think like Sahaj, do you have any other last bits of advice that you want to throw at them?
I'd say a couple of things. One, just pick an event that suits your strengths. If you don't know what your strength is, I would say look at the like different like either exams or role plays and see which ones you're just most inherently drawn to. I think that'll give you a good place to start. After that, I would say again, just to restate what we've talked about, I think the theme underpinning all of this is it comes down to A, the fundamentals, make sure you know the business fundamentals, make sure you're confident, and then also B, the creativity, make sure you have something that sets you apart from everyone else. And I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, for sure. On the first point that you said, I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, what's the easiest event? This is the place that I'll be, you know, doing the best in, and that's not the mindset to go. I think like a lot of people are like, oh, let's do quick serve restaurant, whatever that was, and it's
Yeah,
like, oh, let's just do that one. No one else is doing that one, and then everyone thinks like that. So then you end up getting a very like mixed set of people throughout each of the events. So just
exactly. Yeah,
pick
play to your strengths, not to what you think others are.
your strengths and just attack them. I think that's really good advice. But yeah, I think that wraps up all the questions and the majority of what we wanted to talk about and hit in this
Yeah, thanks for
interview.
having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining. If you guys have any questions, drop them down in the comments, and I'll make sure to address them in a future video. Yeah, awesome.
Cool. Yeah, thank you so much. Bye.
That's it.